BeastNet is brought to you by James Safety Services in partnership with OCR Buddy and OCR Strong. Here we discuss all things OCR and fitness related. Welcome to BeastNet.
Hey everybody, it's Mike with BeastNet. On today's episode, I got with me Billy Richards. Billy, explain to everyone who you are.
All right, so my name is Billy Richards. I'm a personal trainer. I live in New York. I'm also a veteran. I served 4 years in the Marine Corps, 3 years in the Army. And towards the end of my second term when I was in the Army, I started getting into endurance events and everything. And currently I run endurance events carrying the American flag to honor my friends that aren't around. And, when I started with the endurance events, it started out with, it started out with an Army birthday 10 miler, and then it graduated to marathons. Then I got into the obstacle racing realm, shortly after I got out of the military. And, I've done over 100 Spartan races. I've attempted a world record before, which is what most people know me for. I had the world record at the time was 41 100 milers in a year, 100 mile ultra marathon. So a run that's, 100 miles or more. And I did that. I managed to get 37 of them before I went down with an injured hip. And at the moment right now, with my injury and everything, like I can't really run continuously. So I went back to doing more on the Spartan side because the obstacles break up the running a little bit. So this year I currently have 10 Spartan trifectas. So a Spartan trifecta, for those people that don't know, it's when you do the sprint, super, beast in a single calendar year. And I've done that 10 times this year so far, with I correct that, 6 of those being ultra distance beasts, which the ultra is about a 50K, so a 31-mile obstacle race. And currently I think I'm at 112 races with the American flag. Wow. As far as Spartan goes, but overall I'm at 404. So wow. I've carried that up. Yeah. And I didn't start out with the American flag. I started out just running. And then I started to carry it just to honor my friends. And it actually started in 4th of July of 2015. So from 4th of July of 2015 till now, I've done over 400 events with it.
Wow. That's pretty cool. So, I mean, what made you think of starting to do them with the flag?
Originally, the year before I started with the flag, I started doing everything with a 45-pound backpack. It was, just 45 pounds is the standard training load for, like infantry / it's like EIB standard. And, I did it to symbolize the hardships that the military goes through and everything. And then the following year, I added the flag to it. Yeah, just as a way. And then also too, on top of that, I've used the American flag for many causes, like outside of just the military. I raised awareness in 2016 towards the struggles the police were having. So I did a Thank the Police tour where I handed out thank you cards and a separate American flag for every precinct that I ran for. And I ran around the country for about 2 weeks doing that.
Wow.
I mean, it was a little longer than 2 weeks though, but the actual tour itself, I was only able to get 2 weeks off work. So I pretty much, I started, I'm from Long Island, New York. So I started up there. I went as far south as Miami and then as far west as San Diego. And then I came back across and I stopped, over the whole course of it, I stopped at about 39 precincts.
Wow. That's impressive. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and right now, currently, I still run with the flag. I still run with the flag, obviously. But right now it's mostly just been Spartan races and stuff like that. Because the VA says I need a hip replacement, but eventually I'll get one. They won't do it because I'm too young.
Yeah, eventually, and that's gotta be tough. I mean, that's been the hardest thing for me. That's my biggest worry right now is, because I'm 45, pushing myself, trying to make all this stuff work. And I'm just worried that I'm going to have one of those where all of a sudden I'm going to have an injury that says I can't do it anymore. And I mean, I've come close a couple of times. I shattered my foot a couple of years ago and did a few other things and had some injuries where like after my foot, they told me I'd never run again. And I said, yeah, watch me.
Yeah. They always say stuff like that.
Yeah.
You figure out ways to make it work though.
They do. So, I mean, I got it going again. I started running it. It took me a couple of years though. I took a couple of years and took a break, gained a bunch of weight. And then I started running again and all that and lost a bunch of it again. But, it's got to be interesting to run with the flag though. I mean, I've seen a couple of people do it on Spartan races. How do you get around some of the obstacles? I mean, do you carry it while you're doing all the obstacles? I'd say some of it would be a little difficult because I mean, obviously you're not taking with you on the dunk wall and stuff like that, so you're not going to dunk that thing under the water. But I mean, how do you deal with it on the obstacles? Do you just have a team with you and you can pass it off, or?
So with the stuff that requires two hands, like monkey bars, twisters, stuff like that, I'll usually either ask a fellow racer or I'll have the volunteer hold it for that. But I pretty much taught myself to jump over the wall so I'll kind of just pin the wall under my arm and then, so I'll do like a chip, like the chicken wing method, and then I'll use my outside leg to hook over, and then I'll kind of spin the flag over the top. But I have it furled up when I do that. And then I've figured out how to do the barbed wire crawl, but just simply by rolling and spinning the flag under the wire. I have videos on, like an Instagram of me doing it somewhere. But I pretty much like helicopter spin as I'm rolling, and it never hits the ground and it stays under the wire.
No, I'm definitely.
I actually taught myself that at Killington last year because I got to the barbed wire, and in the past I've had a volunteer hold it, but they were short on volunteers that day, so there was no one at the barbed wire crawl. So I just figured out a way to do it, and it worked.
Yeah, and that's it. You found an obstacle and got over it. That's what most of us Spartan races learn how to do. So, yep. I mean, and it's pretty fascinating to see. I mean, I know you said you did the 45 pounds. I did once. I did the Montana Beast, the whole like the trifecta weekend one year with a 20-pound pack, and that was bad enough.
But yeah, that's a tough event too, Montana.
Oh yeah, I had a friend who told me that they didn't think I could do it, and I'm like, watch me. So I put on a 20-pound pack and just did the entire trifecta weekend. I was not happy with myself by the end of it, but I did it. So
yeah,
some of those obstacles are difficult with the pack when you got that much weight. Like Bender, as I came up and over the top of Bender, the pack shifted.
Oh,
and actually like almost pulled me the rest of the way, all the way over the side, because it was like all of a sudden it shifted as I flipped over the top. So I had a couple times where the pack, you forget it's there, and then all of a sudden it doesn't moves in the wrong way, and you're like, oh, now I remember that thing. So
yeah, I did a lot of obstacle races with the 45-pound pack, but I stopped doing it after a Tough Mudder in 2016. I was on the Funky Monkey 2.0 obstacle, which is the one where it goes monkey bars to a swing to a long floating pole. And I stopped doing it because towards the end of the floating pole, I ruptured my right bicep tendon. So I ended up having to go under the knife for it. I still finished the obstacle somehow, but I didn't think it was going to be that bad. But I went to the VA a couple of days afterwards, and then had an MRI and everything, and my bicep tendon was off the bone by 2 centimeters.
Ooh,
so
that's never good. It's not a good thing. So
no, not at all. I mean, I overcame it. It really didn't stop me much. I just shifted my emphasis from doing obstacles that year to just doing like road races and ultra marathons. So I was pretty much like back out there about 10 days after the surgery while I was still in a hard cast. I just carried the American flag in my left arm, and I took the sling and I cinched my arm down real tight so my bicep wouldn't start to activate. And I just, the first race back, I did a 5K and then a 5 mile in the same weekend. And then like 3 weeks after that, I did a 50-mile charity run. Like pretty much like right off the operating table. So, I've done a lot of crazy stuff.
Thought I did some crazy things. I did Hawaii one year with a broken foot, so my foot was still in the boot.
Yeah, Hawaii is a tough one. I just did that one this year.
Yeah, so did I. I was there again this year. So it was, and this year was probably, actually, I'll be honest, I've done it 4 times now, and this was probably the worst year. This was the toughest year. They figured out how to use those hills nicely.
Oh yeah, no, I did the ultra with the trifecta this year, and getting that flag through the jungle was miserable.
No, I bet. So that's crazy. So you said you do the 100 milers, but you kind of backed off because of the hip injury.
Yeah,
So
I mean, after my injury, I did attempt the Blood Rock 100, but I ended up distance dropping to the 55K because my back started to freeze up, my hip, my back and hip started to freeze up and everything. That's one in Alabama, and that had about, I think it was like 28 or 27, 28,000 feet of gain. So it was like a mountain race, which is it was a mountain race with an extended cutoff. So I figured, it wouldn't bother the hip quite as much, but yeah, it just kept freezing. But yeah, like yeah, I've done several things. Like I've raised money for charity here and there too. Like 20 2017, I did the Texas Quad, which is 4 marathons in 4 days. I did that with a 45-pound pack and flag.
wow.
And that I raised money for an organization called Boots on the Ground. They went under during COVID, but back then I carried 45 pounds of canned goods, and then I donated the canned goods to charity after I was done. And then I also had another stint, like right before I did the 100 milers, where I found this series called the Savage Seven, and they introduced 50Ks with it. So what the Savage Seven is you do 7 marathons in 7 days, and they had an upgrade to a 50K option. So I ended up finishing all 7 50Ks while carrying the American flag. And then 3 weeks after that is when when I decided to do the 100-mile challenge.
Wow. That's impressive. That's some distance. I mean, I was impressed with myself with doing 100 miles in a month, but but that's been my goal. I've done 100 miles a month every month since May of 2020. But I mean, 100 miles. I have never, the most I've done in a row is 45. So actually 44, because what I usually do is my birthday every year, I run my age.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
It's a pretty cool idea.
yeah, I run my age. So this shit last year was 44. So in December this year, I'll have to run 45 miles. So I always run my age. So it's just kind of it's something that I've started like 2 or 3, it was 3 years ago now, I think I started it, and it was just, let's see if I can do it for fun. And I just that one was a birthday party pretty much. We met at the high school by my house, and I just ran the track. But I had like all my friends would show up throughout the day, and we'd have like, cake and ice cream and whatever while I was running. So, and just kind of had the birthday party where they all just met me. It was pretty cool. Yeah, it was a fun little thing. So, and then it just became a habit. So, although last year I did do it, it was brutal. I did it on the treadmill. So
That's miserable.
it wasn't so bad. I have the treadmill because I have one in my garage, and I just have my iPad, or actually that time I like put a TV in front of it and just turned on like my favorite show and just ran on the treadmill and watched my show. Binge watched. It's like, it's better than sitting on the couch and binge watching, I guess.
Yeah, like keeps the mind occupied.
Yeah. And that's it. I like me for running, and I'm one of those ones. I know some people always talk about how they hate running and distance. I did when I was younger, but as I've gotten older, I like the distance running because it's become my like meditation.
Well, me, I like running more for speed, and believe it or not, I actually don't like distance running. Well, I mean, I'm more of a gym guy,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a little different when there's like an objective involved with it, though. So it's more like it's something that I'm like trying to achieve, So like the 100-mile distance, for example, I guess it brings me back to the military time, because you're trying to hit different objectives by like different but you're hitting different checkpoints by like different times,
Mm-hmm.
or by a certain time. So like usually like 100 milers, like the average cutoff's like 30 hours. Whereas like some of the ones on more brutal terrain, that might extend them a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So like that year I did it, I knocked out the first 15 of them before I even hit a DNF. And my first DNF was like a race I should have like easily gotten through. It was the Keys 100. But I had torn something in my shin the week before at the Bloodroot Ultra. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. It's an ultra marathon in Pittsfield, Vermont. So it's run by Peak Races. So that's a Spartan sister company. Joe DeSena is the same owner of the Peak Races. Actually came before Spartan.
Yeah.
So Peak Races is more testing your limits. Spartan, like Spartan stemmed off the death race and everything, which is also under Peak Races. But Pittsfield's the next town over from Killington. So he's got like a small little mountain in his backyard, and you just run up and down it. You do like 10-mile loops, and I think only two of us finished that year. But there was this one section like around 8 miles in where there was like a downgrade, a 40-degree downgrade that stopped at a creek crossing, so you had to put on the brakes real fast. And I think it was like right around that moment, like I stopped like right before I hit the creek crossing. I felt a little pop in my shin, and I had like about 22 miles left in the race. So I hobbled the last 22 miles in. I still came off at the finish. But then the next week was at Keys 100, and I still made it to about miles, like around like 65 or so. But I taped up my shin in the last ditch effort to get out there, and I ended up going to the point where it was just misery, just trying to stand. So I DNF'd that one, and then I took a week or two after that, and then I picked right back up. But like that year, I totaled out from November of 2018 till November of 2019 with 37 100-mile finishes.
Wow.
And like my longest stretch like of consecutive weekends was 12, and that was the last 12 I did. And I tunnel hill, surprisingly, which is pretty flat and fast though, but it's like it's classified as a trail race, but there's a lot of like hard packed surface that's like borderline like pavement. So that's the one that kind of did my hip in like towards the end of it though. That's the one where the last like 5-6 miles of it I just hobbled in, like I could barely stand, but somehow I pulled off the finish. And then I ended up the following week I had a 24-hour race. It was called the Sadler's Creek Stumble, and I pretty much stumbled off the starting line and had to pull out like after one 10K loop, and that was what ended it, because like I just couldn't keep going.
Yeah. And sometimes that's one of the things that's hardest, I think, for me, is when all of a sudden you're like, okay, I need to step back. I need to stop. And I've had a couple races where it was that, you have that thought in your brain. It's like, yeah, my body's telling me I'm done.
Yeah. I mean, you can override the pain like when you're zoned in, but like you can only do so much of it, like once I get going, like you get to the point where you're just like an unstoppable force, and you just keep going and going and going until you get to the point where you're too severe. Yeah, because I've had races like the New Jersey Ultra Beast in 2018, where about a mile or so in, it was on the first downgrade. I rolled my ankle on a rock and I felt a pop. It didn't dislodge, but I did find out I ended up chipping my talus bone later on. But I was in the middle like of a single track trail, so I couldn't pull from the race. So I'm like, okay, I'll hobble down to the bottom of the mountain and pull myself out of it. But by the time I got down to the bottom of the mountain, my foot went numb. So I'm like, all right, let me see how far I can get with this. And I ended up finishing it in like 11 hours. And then I came out the next day and did the beast. And then by Tuesday, my ankle was Tuesday of that week, my ankle was purple. And I ended up going to the ER, getting it x-rayed, and they told me I chipped my talus bone.
Ooh.
Yeah, which it didn't dislodge, so I was still able to walk, but every so often my foot would freeze and I just have to like kind of move it around to get it going again. But after I did that, the ER put me in a boot for about a week. But after I got out of the boot, I saw the orthopedic, and the orthopedic's like, look, there's nothing we can do about it, but you have to keep it moving, otherwise it's going to freeze. So he's like, start running at about 70%, and then you can gradually pick it up to the point where you're going at 100% again.
Yeah.
So that weekend I signed up for the Fayetteville Super and Sprint, and I went down there and did those two races. I didn't run them competitively or anything. I carry the flag, but I just kind of I did them more for completion. So,
which sometimes, I mean, that's what we do. I've done a couple where it's just kind of, I'm just there to complete it. Like I was taking it easy I did the Seattle and Hawaii trifectas this year, like back-to-back weekends. But I've got the Ironman coming up, which actually the Ironman already would have happened by the time this airs, but I'm doing it actually this weekend. I'm doing the Ironman, but that was kind of my big focus. It's like I'm doing this.
Where are you doing it at?
Washington. It's here in Washington. So
Okay.
It's a half iron. I'm not doing the full yet. I'm not that ready for that. But
Okay.
but it's one of those that, that's been my focus, is I've been pushing for that one, and I didn't want to hurt myself or do something on one of the Spartan races that, makes an issue, because that was one issue I had last year when I went for it. I did something to my bicep in Hawaii last year, which made it a little hard to swim when I hit the Ironman. So, and this year I'm just trying not to do it.
Yeah. I attended my first Ironman pretty much on a whim. I didn't train for a while. And I don't recommend that. I mean, the swim part of it wasn't too bad though, because I did the Little Debbie Ironman in 2016. This is probably about a month removed from when I got my brace off of my arm from the bicep tendon surgery. But the swimming was downstream in the Tennessee River, and then there was a 116-mile bike ride to make up for the easier swim and then the marathon. But I ended up DNFing because I blew out a bike tire at mile 94. And I couldn't get it fixed in time, and they ended up pulling me off of the course. It was a rough day though, because like it was a heat index of about 115, I think.
Ooh.
So it wasn't wetsuit legal, because the wetsuit gives you a lot of buoyancy though. But like with that, I'm not really that great of a swimmer. I side-stroked the entire thing.
Okay, you got through it.
So yeah, I think I finished the swim in probably like about an hour 40 or somewhere around there. And then, from there, it was a tough DNF to take, with the amount of like logistics and funding that it costs and everything.
Yeah.
But I did end up getting it wasn't an Ironman, but I did end up getting a full distance triathlon finish like later on that year in Palm Springs. It was the Hits brand.
Mm-hmm.
So, that one too. Yeah, that was the opposite. It was super cold for the swim, and I didn't think to bring booties or gloves, so I was pretty much swimming with fists, and I got out of the water after about 2 hours. I barely made the cutoff with that one though, but I still ended up finishing, and I finished in like 15 hours still. So
yeah, I want to do one. I definitely want to do a full someday, but I want to get the half out of the way, because I attempted the half last year, and what happened was, one, it took me too long to get out of the water. I finished in time. I made the cut, but like just squeezed by. But I literally I didn't technically really know how to swim. I had someone took a couple lessons right beforehand. I'm really good at not drowning, but I'm not good at swimming. I'm good at just keeping my head above water, but I'm not good at moving. And everyone's like, well, you used to be a scuba diver. I'm like, yeah, but that's completely different. You put fins on and you
totally
kick.
different.
Total different type of swimming,
Yeah.
And so I pretty much, I did not do well on the swim. I came out of the water, was having breathing problems because I have asthma, and I'm like, whatever, but I'm going for it. Finally got my breathing under control at mile 20. But I had, it was a bike I'd borrowed. I'd ridden it twice. I had 10 miles on this bike. It actually got stuck, and I couldn't shift after mile 25. So I was stuck in high gear, so I can go pedal hard. But the second I started going up a hill, I couldn't get shift down to try and go up the hill. So there was all sorts of issues, and I came in at 14 minutes too late. So I missed the cut by 14 minutes, but it was. So now I have my own bike that's downstairs. I actually just picked it back up from the shop, just had some work done on it so that it was ready to go for this weekend. Brand new tires and rims, which you'd be surprised how expensive those are. But, all sorts of stuff. So I've been training a lot harder. So this year should be better. So.
Yeah, I learned the hard way. Don't go out there with factory tires.
No.
When I went out for my second one, it was Palm Springs, so it was in the desert. I just went to a bike store. And I'm like, make those tires indestructible. So they give me gator skins and everything. And he's like, nothing will pierce through this. So I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah, I have gator skin. I put brand new gator skins on it. And one of me and a buddy went for a 40-mile bike ride 2 weeks ago, and one of the wheels was making a funny noise. And I'm like, yeah, I can't have that. So
yeah.
But it's one of those, when I bought the bike, they were the tires that were on it, and it's a used bike. So I don't know how long they'd been, those wheels and tires have been used. So, but
Yeah.
it should be
Yeah.
a much.
My first 3 triathlons were all in like an 8-day stand. And it was pretty much right after I got clearance from the orthopedic, well, sort of clearance. So I went. So it's a funny story though, because I already had a 50-mile race in Pennsylvania scheduled for that Saturday,
Mhm.
and I was supposed to do a sprint. I was going to do a sprint triathlon Sunday, and then the following week, I found this thing in Lake George called the King George Challenge. So it was an Olympic distance on Saturday and a half Ironman on Sunday, and I did all through. Well, before I get to that, I'm at the orthopedic. And I was part of this airborne triathlon team, it was a triathlon team for veterans and everything.
Mhm.
And I wanted to do that triathlon that Sunday. So I'm at the orthopedic, and I'd already been running, even though he didn't really want me to. But I asked him, I'm like, he's in the middle of yelling at me for doing stupid stuff or whatever, because I just had the surgery and everything. So I asked him if I'm cleared, if it's okay to swim. So he's like, yeah, you could swim. That's fine. It's good for rehab and everything. So then I go to him like, well, can I also ride a bike? And he goes to me, he's like, yeah, I don't see why not. You just have to be a little careful. I'm like, okay. So when I left the office, I call up my friend who is the founder of the team. And I ask him, I'm like, all right, you still have spots open for that sprint triathlon on Sunday? So I go to him, I'm like, all right, sign me up. So, long story short, over those 2 weekends, I do the 50-mile race in Pennsylvania, drive 6 hours overnight to the starting line of the triathlon, set my bike up and everything. I do the sprint triathlon, and then the following weekend, I end up finishing the King George Challenge. And I did all the running sections with a 45-pound pack and the flag. I obviously kept the flag in transition for the swim and the bike.
Yeah.
And then but yeah, I ended up completing it all. And as far as the bike training goes, I was 34 at the time, and I hadn't ridden a bike since high school,
Yeah.
and I hadn't swam since I was in the Marine Corps, which I got out in 2003.
Been a bit.
So this was 2016, but I mean, I just kind of knew how to do it, but I had the ultra running background already, so like the endurance carried over from it. But it was definitely a wake up call. I mean, I didn't place well. I just pretty much did well enough to get through it. And I can remember when I was doing, I mean, I did okay with the sprint, but then when I was on the Olympic, I remember the first hill climb I hit, and I'm pedaling as hard as I can, and everyone's flying by me, and I can't figure out what's wrong. And some lady starts riding past me, and she's like, "You have to shift."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Shift." And then I start shifting. I'm like, "Oh, that's so much easier."
That was one of the things that I had, like I said, when I was last year, it got stuck in one gear, but that is a thing. I've been amazed at how much faster you can go, and it's still tough for me to do it if you just pedal the whole time. You just put it in a lower gear,
Yeah.
and just pedal the whole time, and you just keep going instead of doing the thing like I've done my entire life, put it in the hardest gear possible pretty much that I can do, and pedal really hard for like 30 seconds, and then coast, and then pedal really hard and then coast. And it's like,
Yeah.
you burn so much more, burn yourself out so much faster that way than if you just put it in a lower gear and just pedal. So, but yeah, this year should be good. It should be hopefully a better year for me when I do them. So yeah, so it'll be interesting doing the Ironman. I mean, I love Spartans. I love those. I mean, I love doing all that stuff, but it was just, I wanted a different challenge.
Yeah.
Than what I was doing with the Spartan races and just the normal running. And it's like, oh, let's throw swimming and biking into it. And the first thing that was funny when I was first talking about doing it, it was Joe DeCina's like thing that came into my brain is, if it's going to make you uncomfortable, you should do it. And I'm like, yeah,
Absolutely.
and that's what it was. I'm like, I'm not a good swimmer. I don't think I should do this. I don't feel comfortable. That means I should. Yeah. So right on. So what do you have plans coming up?
Well, right now, I just had a death in the family. My mom passed away like a little over a week ago, so
I'm sorry to
my
hear that.
season's currently on hold. My original plan for this year was to max out all the US trifectas and then potentially go to Greece for to get the shield and everything, which
Mhm.
requires 13 trifectas. But I ended up I got number 10 at West Virginia, and then the week after that is when everything happened. So I missed Killington this weekend because I was down taking care of my mom's stuff, and like Tahoe is still up in the air, but chances are I'm not going to be out at that one. So right now I'm just on pause until I get everything situated with that. But yeah, like I don't usually I set my goals like 1 year at a time. Like there's been years like 2014 is pretty much when, well, 2013, or let me go back. I started doing races in 2010. Yeah, so I just did it as a fun thing to do with some of my friends in the military. So I did the Army birthday part of North Carolina. Then after that, I shot straight for a marathon. And my very first marathon, I was in I didn't get all the way through it, but I was in the Special Forces qualification course at the time.
Mhm.
And I'm set to do this marathon on Sunday, and I get a text from our class leader saying that we had a 12-mile ruck that was supposed to be rescheduled earlier in the week. They scheduled it for the Monday right after the marathon. So I was originally supposed to run this marathon with my friend, but my friend had bailed because he didn't want to fail out of the course. But I went for it anyway, and I ended up finishing the marathon in about 3.5 hours. And then the next day, I came out like sore as hell for this 12-mile ruck march. So we had to put a 45-pound ruck on our back, which is 45 pounds dry. So dry means it doesn't include the two quart canteens plus the Camelback we had in there of water, and it doesn't count any consumables. So the MRE we had didn't count either. So it's probably like closer to 65, 70 pounds. And
Mhm.
then we had to do it in our service uniform, boots, and we had to carry a rubber rifle while we were doing it. And you basically had 3 hours to cover 12 miles. So I ended up coming in at about 2 hours and 20 minutes or some change like that. And I actually almost got in trouble for it because I crossed the finish line, and then they're weighing my pack in, and the cadre is weighing my pack in. And one of my buddies comes up to me. He's like, "Damn, dude, didn't you just run a marathon yesterday?" So the cadre overhears it, and he's like, "Wait, whoa, stop." He's like, "A half or a full?" And I'm like, "Oh, full, sergeant." And those guys, they don't like showboaters.
Mhm.
So this dude, like, and I figured I'm gonna get a good job, whatever. And he's like, "No." He immediately starts like ripping me to pieces. He's like, "Oh, what if you would have went down as a heat casualty? What if this? What if that?" He's like, "You know what? Don't even do push-ups. Just go stand over there because you'll probably like it too much." So yeah. And then he eventually came by and apologized to me later, but at the same time, like, I think he just had that initial reaction, like, "Oh, what's wrong with this dude?" But he gave me the talk. He's like, "Look, I know you got life goals, but get through the course first." He's like, you need to stop waking up at 3 a.m. and working out before we do our workouts. You need to stop doing marathons every weekend. So I'm probably the only person in the military that's ever been told to train less.
Hey, I mean, if that's
So
what you like, but I mean, it's one of those things I know that, they worry that overtraining, but I don't know. I've never really liked that word. I mean, I've used it a few times recently and I keep thinking about it more and more. And it's like our bodies are made to do this. It's just a matter if we do it right. So I don't think it's overtraining, it's incorrect training.
well, I mean, there's also a difference between like overtraining and like overreaching.
Yes. Yep. And those are two different
So,
things.
I mean, obviously to get better, yeah. Say that again. I'm sorry, I broke
I
up a
was
little
like, yeah,
bit.
you're right. Those are two different things. That overtraining and overreaching are two different things.
Yeah. But like you always have to break that comfort zone a little bit in order to get better. Like I mean, you always have to suffer a little bit just to get a little bit better. I mean, there are people that overdo it, but at the same time, like, if you're constantly comfortable while you're training, you don't really improve.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's that fine line, but I mean, I crossed it when I was doing all those 100 milers.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that like every weekend just felt like a death sentence. Like, just getting through the night was always the worst part. I'd puke at some point, and there'd be weekends where like 3 a.m. I can't stay awake anymore, so I would start to sprint just to make myself puke, just to keep myself awake. I'd usually well, those type of races are more about like preparation than anything, though.
Yes.
So, like, I mean, yeah, I shouldn't say anybody, but like like if you train yourself up to, like to a decent level of fitness, it ends up, once you have that base level, it's more mental than anything. So like you have to go into, like, I mean, there's some freaks of nature that could just run the entire time,
Mm-hmm.
but you always need like a plan going into it. And I always found that the flat ones were the worst because the same muscles are taking the same beating over and over again.
Yeah.
So the very first 100 miler I did, I actually ended up getting rhabdo because I didn't know that. So, my very first one, I straight up ran the first 50, came in at about 10 hours, and then finished it in 29 hours and 25 minutes. And it took me about an hour to get the last 2 miles in. My legs just liquefied themselves, but yeah, it's just from lack of preparation and everything.
And that's what a lot of this is. A lot of people don't think about that. A lot of this is preparation. There are those people that, can just go out there and do like a Spartan, do all those things like in a weekend, whatever. But when you start getting into the 100 milers and all that, if you're not
Yeah.
prepping for them, if you're not ready for them, I mean, you got to be fueling correctly. You got to fuel correctly when you're out on the course. I mean, it's one of those things. It's like I get all the time. I see people on like some of the pages that I'm on and stuff. People are like, oh, what should I use for, I'm doing a race next weekend. What should I have for, food? And I'm like, you should have figured that out a long time ago.
Yeah.
Because you're not
And
going to try something new the morning of or during the race because you don't know how your stomach and how your body's going to react to it.
oh yeah, and I've made those mistakes plenty of times
Oh
too,
yeah.
though. Like everybody has, though, because if
Yeah.
like not, you don't always know what you're doing when you first get out there and everything,
Mhm.
though. And then after you do a few of them, you start to develop a system and everything. And you pretty much a lot of times, like, you can give suggestions to somebody, but for the most part, like what works for one person might not work for another one. It's real, those type of races are really more about like knowing yourself.
Yeah.
So like what I do for myself might not work for somebody. So you start coming up with a system. Like, I'd always keep like a bunch of like 5 hour energies on me just in case I started the crash. And usually I preload, so like I monitor what I do. So, and like, this isn't really recommended, but I'd also pop a little bit of ibuprofen too, though, to kind of keep the swelling at bay, but I make sure I keep it at the recommended dosage. I don't like overdo it.
Yeah.
So like usually what I would do, though, is I'd have like the little formula, like every like 5 hours, I would do like, 2 ibuprofens and a 5 hour energy. And I would keep that running. And then every like 10 miles or so, I would stretch the legs out real quick, though, because the stretching helps, bring you back into it.
Mhm.
And then like when I was doing the 100 milers, I was short on funding, but most of your 100 miles, the aid stations are very well stocked.
Yeah.
So like every aid station, I just grab a ton of food, shove it down real quick, and then a lot of times I would like eat as I was walking. So I was still covering ground, but at the same time I was refueling. So like usually with like a 100 mile race, when you get out of the aid station, it's also like a lot of times the 100 mile race, though, too, it like pays to know what kind of course you're getting into. Because you could have one that's flat, or you could have one that's got like 30,000 feet of gain, or you can, you could have gently rolling hills. And then you could also have one where there might be like 10+ mile gaps in between aid stations. So that's the type of stuff that you want to know ahead of time. So like so that way, if you need like on course nutrition. I mean, you should always have water on you, and at least like some kind of emergency calories regardless, just in case you hit a wall and you need to bring yourself back. Because what I found out with a lot of these things though too is sometimes even if you get sick like in the beginning, you could like you're never out of it. You can still pull yourself back together, and then all of a sudden, like a couple of hours later, feel fine. Like I had one race. It was the Pine Creek 100. It was the third one I did.
Mhm.
Around mile 40, I was puking, and I was in the sunlight. I was overheating a little bit. So basically, all I did was I just pulled the pace back a little bit, and I just waited it out. And then before you knew it, I was back to running again, and I ended up it was a tight one, but I finished it in like around 29 and change.
Mm.
So my fastest one was 22:53 or 22:53, and that was the Skydive Ultra in Florida.
Nice. Yeah, I
And one of the things that helped keep me awake through the night is it was like raining sideways, so it kept me awake.
Oh, I bet.
But
Yeah, I do a crazy 24-hour event every June, and there's a special buckle if somebody hits 100 miles and nobody's done it yet.
which one is it?
It's the CSU Pacific Northwest.
Okay.
So it's the CSU 24-hour. They end up if you go for the 100-miler, I think they give you 30 hours instead of the 24. It might be a little more than that, but yeah, they give you extra time. But it's like nobody, I think the closest anyone came, I think, was this year, and someone hit like 80. So
Jeez.
yeah, nobody's been able to hit the 100 yet. Most I've done on it was 35, but I'm like this year I had 35, but it was all of a sudden I had like every part of my body cramped. And I think what it was is I tried food that I normally don't. I normally don't have like cup of noodle or anything like that because of all the salt. And that's one of the things that one of my race partners had. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll try one. And I did that. And right after I did that, like my entire body just cramped. Like, nope, I'm done.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to too. Like a lot of times, what works for one person might not work for another.
Mm-hmm.
So like most of the time, though, especially too on game day, you never try anything new. You just roll with what you got, and
Yeah, and that was my mistake. I grabbed something different. Normally for me, whether I do anything like when I've done the Spartan ultras and stuff, which I know is only 30 miles and stuff like that. But for me, it's peanut butter sandwiches. I like the peanut butter sandwiches for my fuel, and then something with sugar in it.
Yeah, with the Ultra Split, I mean, I've used Uncrustables before.
Mhm.
I have 17 Spartan Ultra finishes. So like I've had times where I've used like Uncrustables and stuff like that, but generally transition area, believe it or not, I'll get a couple of hot pockets from a gas station, and I'll just throw them in either my bucket or transition bag, whatever I use. And then by the time I get the transition, they're thawed out. So I'll eat them real fast. They're easily digestible. They're just a quick hit of calories, and it keeps you in it. And then usually I'll have like a lot of shot blocks and stuff like that. I'll shove in my Camelback, and every like 2 hours or so, I'll try to down some calories. I mean, right now my races are a little bit prolonged because I don't finish them as fast as I used to. Like the fastest, because there were a couple of them. Like I know the ultra in South Carolina in 2018. I finished that one in like around 6.5 hours. So that one, I obviously didn't really do too much for nutrition. I just downed something at the transition area really fast. But like events like Killington, for example, where you're basically riding cutoffs, like an event like that, or even in like Hawaii took me a little over 12 hours to finish. So like with that one, I made sure that I had, like a bunch of shot blocks, and then I would have a few Cliff Bars if I needed solid food, and then I still carried like some emergency caffeine on me just in case I needed a boost. But yeah, with the long, a lot of it's the ones that take longer to do, I always make sure I have more nutrition on me. And then the ones that are like flat and fast, I don't really carry as much, but I'll always make sure I have something on me just in case I hit that wall. Because
Well,
like anything ultra distance is all about preparation.
it is. And it's like you said too, the other thing you want to check with is like what kind of, like with Spartan, most time we know there's only gonna be a couple drink station, a couple, hydration stations, stuff like that. So you kind of have to bring your own stuff. The one, like I said, mentioned the Sisu, that's all self-supported. There's nothing out there. It's all a big, huge trail system, and you take what you need. And then I've done a couple other ones. Like one of the marathons I did, I'd done it the year before, and I knew like every 3 miles they had hydration, and they had, like you could grab a goo or something like that. They had a couple of those, and I'm like, I know what they have on this one. It's every 3 miles. So I just had that one. I just took like a little pack that had, because it looks like a little fanny pack that holds my bib, but also has like a little storage area. And I've just put like 2 or 3, waffles in there, and just in case. But other than that, I knew I could just go for it, and then I didn't have to carry anything with me because I knew they were there. But other ones
Yeah.
I've been on, like I said, the Sisu, it's all self-supported. Yeah. So, and that's always good to know. What do I need to bring with me? Yeah, I don't know. Was there anything else you want to tell the listeners while we got you? We're getting close to that hour mark, so, and Don gets mad at me if I go past that.
Yeah. I think I covered just about anything. Is there anything else you wanted to ask me, or?
Not really. I mean, you covered everything that I kind of wanted. I mean, it sounds amazing. I mean, to do all those races with the flag. I mean, everything else, and just to push your body to those limits. I mean, it's great to see, someone push like that. I mean, you don't see that much anymore where someone just pushes themselves to those limits. So, and it's impressive to see.
Yeah, and well, I've done a lot of stuff too, though, where sometimes I'll even like push the travel limits. Like I had I'll tell one more quick story real quick. Like do it like 2018, for example. I ended up with like 12 trifectas that year.
Mhm.
And the issue I had was I was short on supers. So I was there was one weekend where I was slotted to do the Dallas Ultra, and there was a super the next day in Atlanta that I needed. So I didn't have, I couldn't get connecting flights or anything. And if I got a flight to Dallas and then a return flight from Atlanta, the drive in between, the rental car fees were like through the roof to return it. So I ended up just taking my own car. So that weekend I left a day early. So like from New York, I drove 26 hours straight to get down to packet pickup for the Ultra. I picked the packet up, and then I came out the next day. I actually took first in the open heat, with the flag and everything. And then I immediately hopped in my car, drove about 10, I think it was like 8 to 10 hours overnight to Atlanta, straight to the super parking lot. I finished the super, so that was, I believe, trifecta number either 10 or 11 for that year. And then after that, I drove to my mom's house in North Carolina after that, and then I slept for a little bit, and then I drove back to New York. So I covered probably about 3,000 miles or so in like 4 days.
Wow, that's some driving. Yeah, and Dallas is a good one. I've done the Dallas Ultra last year. I did the Dallas Ultra, so that's a nice, flat, easy one.
Yeah. Well, this is at Glen Rose.
Yeah, this is before they moved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Glen Rose is a little bit more hilly than the new one.
That's what I've heard. The new one's a lot flatter than they say Glen Rose, and Glen Rose was considered flat. So this is, yeah. It's been great talking to you. I hope that someday I actually get to meet you in person. That sounds pretty, you sound like you'd be a fun person to get to know in person and all that. So try to keep up with you.
A lot of the races that you lifted up that you listed earlier, I was actually at.
No, probably. It's one of those things. It's so funny. I'll talk to people. I'm like, oh yeah, I bet did this one and that one. They're like, oh yeah, I was there. So, and it's so funny how it's like, oh, we probably crossed paths. So, well, hopefully I run into one of them and I get to meet you in person. But it's been very nice talking to you and getting to know you. And I hope to talk to you again soon.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, anytime. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thanks for listening to the BeastNet podcast. If you haven't done it yet, find us on Facebook, like and share the podcast. Give us a review on iTunes or Spotify. All these things will help to expand the show in the future. Don't forget to subscribe and let us know what you think and what you'd like to hear.